Let's see if Carlos can see us. All right. Well, welcome. We're going to get started. So thank you all for joining here on Zoom and for joining on YouTube. And if one of the co-hosts wants to disable the little door knocking sound when people are joining us, we will get started. So for folks that are new, this is what we're going to cover. We're just going to review the agenda, a welcome to folks that are just finding out about Humanity First Movement, and announcing our website and some volunteer initiatives. And then we're doing a candidate spotlight. Are we in the right week here? Yes, we are. Yes. All right. Hang on, everyone. I'm going to stop the share and refresh the slides because it's not quite right. Perfect. All right, presenting again and screen sharing again. Apologies. All right, picking right back up. We have Marilyn Strickland joining us tonight from Washington State, and we are talking about the working groups at the National Humanity First Movement and then opening it up for your questions. So we're starting. We record these things. You find them on our YouTube channel where it's live streaming now. We're presenting about the Humanity First Days from California that they're kind of leading the nation in, and then going on to our presentation with Marilyn. And then our working groups have about 3 to 5 minutes to present, and we won't be taking questions at that time, even though we'll take questions during the earlier 2 sections. And then there's a period for your comments. So if anyone here is new on the Zoom call or in the YouTube live stream, if you just want to say hello so we kind of know who's here. So who we are, because Andrew Yang's organization is Humanity Forward, and we're the Humanity First Movement. So a lot of folks are like, what's that? So we're the network that evolved out of the Yang 2020 grassroots volunteers across all 50 states that were doing the phone banking, the door knocking, the yanging. And we have continued with the ideas from the campaign and are carrying them forward in partnership with Humanity Forward. We meet weekly with Humanity Forward on behalf of the whole national network. And basically over the next 3 months, which are super critical, we're just trying to reactivate the full strength and connect with all of these other great organizations, Income Movement, Movement for a People's Party, Fair Vote, and just realize these ideas that were the vision that we came out of. So there's 2 national Slack workspaces now. There is the Humanity First Movement Slack, where we're building this network of state and local chapters. And then there's the Humanity Forward Rapid Response Slack, where there's immediate kind of volunteering to be done. Candidate support, COVID relief calling. So you'll hear more about that on this call. So next, our website finally is live. So if you would like to join this national network seeking to realize this vision, go to hfmovement.org. So hfmovement.org, and then you can click join a chapter, and that will take you to the map, and you click your state and sign on up and get in here. We need you. All right, so turning it over to Elaine to talk about the National Humanity First Day coming up in August.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elaine Way from California State Leadership, also part of the interim board. I wanted to give a shout out to the Humanity First logo that was actually made by Paget KG. So I'm letting her know that I took it for this day. So this is going to be a National Humanity First Day on August 15th, a Saturday. It's supposed to be a digital and physical representation of what Humanity First means to you. So this is a very decentralized sort of day where you can create local acts of community service with your local organizers or your friends, but most of the time, like last year, there were several Humanity First days that individuals can actually go through and express what humanity first means to them, right? Obviously practicing safe social distancing guidelines. So it's a day to remember our core values and like what humanity first represents to ourselves and our larger community. And I would say that's a kind of a crucial thing because of everything we've been seeing on the news nowadays, obviously with pandemic and financial insecurity and protests and other stuff. So I would say that this day is meant to, again, reconnect each other, both digitally, find people who are looking to build, to brighten, bring positivity, and also uplift everyone in all 50 states. So I know that it will be a lot of gang who will see this first, but we're hoping to include everybody, right? It's humanity first. And so last year we did encourage people, which is really crucial, to upload short clips, video clips of themselves. And basically, if you have friends helping you, to sort of upload those clips onto whatever social media of your choice with the hashtags of #Humanity First Day or #Pledge for Humanity. We will update you on that because we might be working with Humanity Forward to push Pledge for Humanity. That's not completely finalized yet, but it is really crucial for the video clips because we found last time, the several times last year, people found each other, in their own local neighborhoods across the nation, going, oh wow, I didn't think about doing that, or this is such a cool action, I really want to get in on this. So people ended up meeting each other digitally and otherwise, right? So pretty much it could be anywhere you want it to be. If you clean up a park or a beach, donate to a food pantry. You don't have to actually go necessarily if it's not open, but kind of like put together some food, if you want to do that. Call a loved one, check in on a friend if you haven't talked to them in a while. We did talk about maybe even people doing like a pen pals or calling for COVID relief, etc. Anything you want to do that expresses humanity first. So where you can share your experience, obviously Twitter, Instagram, Rockfin, Discord, all the social medias using those hashtags. And something we can do right now, because it is a little bit early, is to, if you're an organizer, or even if you just want to share it on Facebook, like you're interested and inspired, just make a graphic for it. It is pretty decentralized, and just share it around and see who shows up. It might be a good way to meet each other, obviously social distanced, right? But we will, as national, reach out to the YouTube influencers that we're in touch with to sort of broadcast it even wider. We will share a list so that way, like, not each state is not contacting the same YouTube influencers, but feel free, join in our Slack on the Humanity First Movement Slack to see the people we have reached out to. Matt from Zach and Matt's show said he's interested. So, and I know Paget would too. So those two hopefully will be in on and sharing what they're doing that day. So additional tips, lastly, to leave you with this is to talk about what you love about your city, kind of like what humanity first means to you, and also any policies you feel that will make a difference in yours and other people's lives, right? Like UBI or healthcare for all, data rights, etc. So we'll have more information for you as we get closer, but we'll definitely update you again come next week.
All right, coming into candidate support. So we have a number of primaries coming up in August, September, and then we get into the general elections. So the 4 candidates who have primaries are Marilyn Strickland, who is here tonight joining us, Jen Perlman down in Florida, and then Alex Morris and Dr. Robbie Goldstein in Massachusetts. Then after that, we have a whole number of candidates who are onto the general election. So lots of candidate support to be done. And you in your states, if you would like to find more local and state candidates to see if they're interested in the issues that we are, Massachusetts shared their candidate endorsement templates and so their emails and their process for communicating with your state and local representatives, just to let them know who you are, the issues that are most important to you, and start that dialogue so we can really let the legislators in our states know that we're an organized voting bloc and we're ready for these ideas to, help us pass through these difficult times. All right, so speaking of that, I would like to introduce Marilyn Strickland and let her introduce herself. She and her campaign manager here tonight. And so Marilyn, if you would just like to introduce yourself and let folks know who you are and how you would present yourself to voters, since this is a pool of potential phone bankers here listening.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for having me here tonight. And thank you for volunteering to make democracy work. My primary is already started, and August 4th is the last day you can vote. In Washington State, we have mail-in ballots, so they've already started dropping. And I am the former two-term mayor of Tacoma, and I'm honored to be a humanity forward candidate for many reasons. Number one, I had a chance to talk with Andrew Yang I'd say about a month and a half ago. And what I liked about him was just his down-to-earth approach. And over time, as I've done research about the type of people who are attracted to this particular effort, there really is no one type of person. It is the largest cross-section of people I have seen attracted to any effort, any candidate, and any movement. And I think that's why this is real. When I think about the opportunity to really think about how we remake the economy, this is a big opportunity. And that's why I, along with the other humanity forward candidates, are excited about having your help. Now, when I ran for mayor the first time, I won by 1,100 votes, and we did not know for 3 days what the outcome was. I want to make sure that I win resoundingly, but it doesn't take 3 or 4 days to find out what the outcome is. With that said, I know this is a competitive race, and I want to make sure that we are enthusiastic, that we show up, and we show people why this matters. Being a humanity forward candidate is a really big deal because of you, because of your efforts, because of your desire to volunteer. And we want you to be excited about my candidacy and what I want to do in Congress. And here's what I want to do. We have to think about making this economy work for every single person who lives here in this country. And this is why I'm enthusiastic about doing pilot programs across the country for universal basic income. As a former mayor, it thrills me that Michael Tubbs started doing UBI in Stockton, California 18 months ago, and now there are 14 other mayors who've signed up to do this. There's an opportunity to get traction. So instead of just talking about this in Congress, we're actually going to pilot it in markets, see what works, and think about how we develop a national strategy. You all know this. If we have UBI in America, it will address so many of the big issues that we're trying to fix. In addition to that, we know that we need universal health care so that every person who calls this America home has a chance to get access to health care, but also looking at having people's basic needs met. We never imagined that COVID would be here the way it is, and how it is causing a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and then also the social unrest that is based on inequality and racism. I'm ready to go to Congress to work on all three of those things. And I really believe that having been a mayor on the ground with the people for 8 years just makes me uniquely qualified because I have a lens that no one else in this race has. But more than anything, I just want to say thank you for being here and how enthusiastic and proud I am to be a humanity forward candidate. We're going to remake the economy, but we need to get people like me and the many other candidates into Congress so that we can have a conversation and move things forward. And I'm really excited to be here today. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for volunteering for this campaign. We're going to ask you to dig in and to show up and to make as many calls as possible. But the good news is that when you call, there's a good chance you're going to hear someone say, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for her. Tell me more. And so I think that's a really good opportunity to do some good work and to really think about how we make this a better country that is human-centered. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today. And thank you so much for wanting to volunteer for my campaign.
Okay, before we take questions, we're going to hear from Marilyn's campaign manager about what we can do to help her.
Awesome. Thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew. I have the pleasure of being Marilyn's campaign manager. And the most important thing to highlight, I think, is that, as Marilyn said, this primary has already started. Even though Election Day isn't for another 12 days, this next Tuesday, the 4th, people have their ballots and people are voting. Washington State is a exclusively mail-in ballot state. So that means that folks have their ballots in their hand right now. So there's a decent chance that you call someone, they could pick up, listen to your conversation, and then just pick up their ballot right away. So these calls really matter, and we really appreciate it. A little bit on the race. There are a total of 18 candidates running in this race. There are 3 Democrats who are viewed as the front runners. Maryland is one of those 3. And this is a top 2 primary state, so it is possible 2 Democrats could make it through. But it's also possible that one of the Republicans in the race could make it through because it's a Democratic leaning district. It's not a overwhelmingly Democratic district. The goal that I have set for you all and for our volunteers is to call 10,000 voters between now and August 4th. We have virtual phone banking parties on Zoom going on every day. I actually updated this on another document. It's going to be every weekday from 5 to 8 Pacific, and then Saturday and Sunday starting at 11 a.m. Pacific. If you would rather make calls on your own, we can also set you up for that. Just reach out to me or to our Community Forward point of contact, whose name is Dylan, and who is also on this call. And we will get you what you need. We'll get you the phone bank link. We'll get you the phone bank script. We'll get you a one-pager or a two-pager on Maryland's policy, whatever you need to feel comfortable. We also have a Slack link, which we have included in this slide that Catherine was good enough to create. So you can join us there to keep up to date on new phone banks we're creating, new messages that we're using in phone banking. Yeah, that's the general rule. 10,000 calls in 12 days. We can do it.
All right. Do folks want to ask any questions of Marilyn, kind of find out more about her?
Anything?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciated your intro. It was really inspiring, to be honest. So I just really appreciate you being here and taking the time to let us know more about you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. One thing I forgot to do, and I always forget this, but it's a big deal. So, I had the privilege of being mayor for 2 terms, and I'm running on my record of proven leadership. But if I'm elected to Congress, I will be the first African-American member of the Washington state delegation. And Washington has 10 members of Congress because we redistricted after the last census. We added a seat. And if I'm elected to Congress too, I will be the first Korean-American woman to serve in Congress in U.S. history. And so in addition to moving this forward and really thinking about how we remake government to work for people, we have a chance to make history too. And I think that's pretty cool. And that message resonates with people.
I had a question. So what distinguishes you, I guess if you would tell us a little bit more about the voters that we would be calling.
Sure,
So
no,
these folks that we're calling, what is it that makes you the most compelling choice for them?
In December, when I made the declaration to run for Congress, none of us imagined that we would be here in the dead of summer, in the middle of a pandemic, an economic crisis, and social strife based on racial injustice. And here we are. And I would say that having served as a mayor in local government, you are dealing with those types of issues on the ground all the time. So for example, when I was mayor of Tacoma, we helped fund 2 community healthcare clinics, and the city was very involved in that. When the Affordable Care Act would have their renewal periods, I was very vocal in public about reminding people that now's the time to enroll or now's the time to re-up. And so I'd say that dealing with healthcare is not something that is completely removed from me. At the city of Tacoma, we're what you call self-insured. So the city pays for healthcare for our employees, and we were constantly having to renegotiate with our providers. The other thing I'd say that's unique too for me is that if you think about all the things that are happening right now with COVID, the relief packages, the equipment that we need, the relief funds going to small businesses, unemployment, those are the types of things that I had to deal with when I was mayor of Tacoma because I led during the last recession. And so coming out of the recession, we had to do 3 things. We had to invest in workers, and that's why we raised the minimum wage and we did paid sick leave. We had to build stuff, infrastructure, roads, bridges, mass transit. And then finally, we were very intentional about investing in small businesses. And I think sometimes the conversation that gets lost, especially for people of color, is that folks talk about small business or business like it's a bad thing, but a lot of entrepreneurs are people of color and immigrants. And so I think it's important for people to understand that there's a very large diaspora and a very diverse experience that people have. And then finally, I would just say that, for better or worse, when you are a mayor, you have a very intimate relationship with your police department. And I tell folks that, I have been on national television speaking at a memorial service for a fallen officer who was responding to a domestic violence call. I've had 2 police unions demand a public apology from me because they didn't like what I said in defense of a family whose daughter died at the hands of police violence. And so if you think about that type of local on the ground experience, it's having that lens and taking that to DC and knowing what kind of policies can work to help local communities. No one else has that. And so I think those are the things that really, that separate me. And of course, I'm a humanity forward candidate. So there's that.
All right, I'm going to see if Paige can unmute herself and ask her question.
Hi, I have a question. Two questions, actually. One is kind of short. So what is your background before you became mayor? Like, what inspired you to get into politics or run for mayor? And then second question, how has your policy shift changed? If at all, how have your policies changed from a local focus as mayor to running for Congress, which is more of like a federal policy?
Absolutely. So those are two good questions. So a bit about my background. So before I ever got into politics, my profession was in marketing and business. So I graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in sociology. And then I went to graduate school at Clark Atlanta University, which is historically Black college and university. And when I got out of there, I worked at this unknown coffee company I never heard of in Seattle. And they were starting to open stores in Chicago and Washington, D.C. And our mantra was 2,000 stores by the year 2000. That was Starbucks. And so my background was in consumer marketing. I worked for an ad agency. And then when there was an open seat on the city council, I was recruited by then the mayor and former Speaker of the House, Brian Ebersol. And he asked me to run for city council, and I was really reticent about it, like most women are. And then finally, I got talked into it, and I ran for council, served for 2 years, and then I ran for mayor because my predecessor was termed out. And I remember when I declared my candidacy for mayor, the newspaper called me audacious. And I ran against a well-known person in the community who'd been there for a long time. Everyone thought he was going to run away with it, and we just outworked them. And so that's why it was such a close race. So my background is in business, consumer marketing, and then I got into public service and really just start thinking about the nexus between business and government and how we can leverage both to help people have better lives and have more economic security. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
My second question was, how, if at all, has your policy shifted from local focus to like federal, national focus?
Well, it's interesting because, having been mayor for 8 years and even serving at the Seattle Chamber of Commerce as its CEO for the past 2 years, local communities rely so much on federal policy and federal funding, to be honest with you. And so I think about every mass transit project usually requires a Tiger grant or a Small Starts grant to become real. We had relationships with the Department of Justice to help fund community policing projects. As we're talking about justice and policing right now and the need for body cameras in every single police department, I can tell you that every city does not have the resources to pay for body cameras and the back-end data. But having been a mayor, I understand that we probably have to have grants and funding come out of the Department of Justice to go to every city so that they can at least get it set up. I'd say the other thing I think about too, though, is that they're the really big things that we need to handle. We know that healthcare is going to be driven by federal policy. I believe that building more housing is going to be driven by federal policy. Everything from how HUD, the Office of Housing and Urban Development, needs to play a bigger role, have more vouchers, have more flexibility for those Section 8 vouchers, and look at programs like the low-income housing tax credit that developers can use to actually build more affordable housing. And so I think for me, it's not necessarily a shift, but it's a mindset that I bring because I know what the federal government can do better to help local people. And think about the pandemic we're in right now. We need to extend unemployment. We need to provide more funds for small businesses who've been left out of this. And we need to think carefully about what something like UBI could mean when we come out of this COVID crisis. And then finally, I will say this. People are getting kicked off of healthcare right now because they're losing their jobs because of COVID. Businesses are closing, they're downsizing. And so when people get kicked off of healthcare, what options do they have? $900 a month COBRA? That's too expensive. But if we have a public option and make some changes in the current healthcare system, we can cover more people. And of course, UBI would help people pay for that. So for me, it's a nexus between what we need to do here at home, but how the federal government can play a much bigger outsized role, be very intentional about helping local communities.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, this is John in Iowa. I have a question.
Hey, John.
Yeah. What is your view? What are your thoughts on the People's Republic of China, Beijing, China, and its relationship to Taiwan, Hong Kong, its Belt and Road Initiative, and the Belt and Road Initiative in relationship to its military power, and how would we counter that?
Okay, I don't know that I can answer that in 3 minutes, but I will tell you this. When I was mayor of Tacoma, I was very intentional about leading trade missions to China and having a relationship with them. Washington State is the most trade-dependent state in the entire country. So much of our commerce depends on good relationships with China, and that benefits local small businesses. Jobs tied to trade on average pay 30% more than other jobs. With that said, we know that our relationship with China is also geopolitical, it's strategic, and it's military. When I say military, it's no coincidence that we have a strong presence in South Korea. So as I think about the relationships and what needs to happen, we know that mainland China's relationship with Taiwan and Hong Kong has been complicated for a while. They have been promised freedoms to do what they want to do, and you see a crackdown happening. But I tell folks too that, when you have a nation of 1.5 billion people and you have a growing economy that's becoming more capitalistic, then what do we think about when we think about how we can maintain freedom, but be honest about what they're doing there? I'd say the Belt and Road Initiative is really fascinating because it is a very big, ambitious plan to create that transportation corridor for trade that will go from mainland China throughout and travel east. It's expensive, it's ambitious, it's audacious, and it's something that's happening right now. But we can't ignore the fact that the United States and its poor leadership in the executive office and being derelict in its duty around the world is actually emboldening China to be stronger and to do things. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we have to think about this geopolitical relationship, the trade relationship, and how we make sure that our frenemy is someone that we are communicating with and we have a relatively good relationship. Tariffs on products that come from China to the US does nothing but hurt US customers. We have to do a better job of having a stronger relationship. And this trade war does nothing to help anyone, especially a state like Washington, where port volume is actually down by 25% because of our bad relationship with China. So it's complicated, but I'm willing to have that relationship. And I don't know if you know this or not, but I hosted President Xi in Tacoma when he was here a few years ago, when he was on his way to Washington, DC to visit President Obama. He stopped here in Washington State. He spent time in Seattle with the big global companies, and we got him to come to Tacoma because he was in charge of the Fujian province a long time ago, and Fuzhou is the head city in Fujian, and he was actually part of the sister city relationship that Tacoma has with Fuzhou. So I spent a lot of time in China. I'm not an expert, I know a lot about it, but I think that's an important relationship to establish and to reestablish because we all benefit from it.
All right, and then last question, Corey.
Hi there, Marilyn, thank you so much for being here. My question is about harm reduction, how you frame that, both locally to you and more nationally.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
Sorry. Harm reduction, how do you frame harm reduction, both more locally and nationally?
Okay, so you're gonna have to tell me what you mean by harm reduction. I've not heard that.
So doing things just to make sure that people that are most vulnerable are having steps enacted to reduce harm to them, things like UBI, more affordable housing, addressing things like food insecurity, the cost of medicine, things like that. That's how I would frame it, I guess.
So is it a bit like the Hippocratic Oath, where whenever you do a policy, you have to be acutely aware of not inadvertently harming the people that you want to help?
Yeah, I feel like if Robbie was here, that's what he would say.
Okay, yeah, so I mean, I would say that this is really about looking at things from the lens of equity. And when we think about equity, it is often exclusively about race and ethnicity and background and orientation, but it also has to take into effect the people who are struggling and are the most vulnerable. And whether that's housing policy, whether that's economic policy, and like you said, even how we look at healthcare. So for example, when we look at what's happening right now with COVID, we know that African Americans are disproportionately affected by COVID. And historically, we've had a not so good relationship with the healthcare system, not by design, but just the way we've interacted with folks. And so what are we doing to improve healthcare systems so it's actually equitable? And what are we doing, for example, to ensure that the people who may be inadvertently harmed by these changes are included and not harmed by it? So that's my definition of harm reduction, if that works for you, but I've never heard the term before.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm going to reshare the slides so folks can just see those links. Let's see, present. And grab those. Okay, so we're going to share these in our Slack, and we will make sure to share them out to the states. But probably the most efficient way to help Maryland over the next 9 days is to directly join either the Humanity Forward Rapid Response Slack or the Strickland for Washington Slack. So there's going to be a number of virtual Zoom phone banking parties, weekday evenings Pacific time. So, and then also on Saturdays, Saturday, Sunday. So this is like the 9-day sprint, very doable goal for us. So let's help get another humanity forward, humanity first thinking candidate into US Congress. Thank you, Marilyn and Andrew, for joining us. And we look forward to working alongside you and all the other coalition of volunteers you've built.
Great. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. And again, thank you for volunteering your time. There are a lot of ways you can spend your time, and I appreciate that you're going to spend it trying to get me into Congress. So thank you so much.
Thank you for remembering who you're fighting for. And thank you so much.
Right. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
So moving along to COVID relief, speaking of doing things and making essential calls, the COVID calling relief program is still going on. The team of 50+ people strong is still reaching out. And if you wish to join them, you just go to this bit.ly/COVID caller training. And they made 226 calls this week, reaching the people who had trouble getting their PayPal information verified via email and text. So you're really helping some of the most vulnerable people. And this is the easiest phone banking there is, because folks have applied for this money. And if they, you're kind of like the fairy showing up and saying, hey, today we want to help connect you to this relief. And if you need these micro grants of $250, it makes all the difference. So please join that calling effort. And now on to the working groups. So I'm covering for regional organizing and just saying we now have 17 active states. So New Hampshire, Utah, and Virginia have come online this week. And we have 14 that are kind of coordinating at the national level, and they've made all of their updates to all of the cool things they're doing in this link that we'll drop in the chat. And we have 7 states that have rebranded themselves for the more expanded Humanity Forward, Humanity First movement. And more states are in the process of thinking about their name changes. There are a number of regional and state Zoom hangs. The next one coming up is the Southwest on August. So check our calendars for the link to 7 p.m. Mountain Time is when they're having that meeting. And then also, I think that is basically, if you don't see your state on here, sign up on our website, come on in, we want to reactivate all of the states. And we just have some social media highlights for the good work being done. Arizona is highlighting all of their consistent core volunteers on their social media, because that's who is making all of these things happen. So big shout out to Arizona for recognizing the most important people are these consistent organizers. Humanity Forward Texas for having this digital organizing workshop, introducing folks to their Basecamp project management organizing platform. So go check them out at humanityforwardtexas.org and join them if you're in Texas. And then big shout out to Georgia for supporting democracy. So Barrington Martin II was the only primary challenger to the now deceased John Lewis. And the Georgia Democratic Party handpicked a number of people to replace John Lewis on the ballot in November, but they did not select Barrington Martin II, even though over 20,000 voters had chosen him as their choice. So they are out there pressuring the Georgia Democrats to include Barrington Martin II in this selection of possibilities that will be considered by Georgia Democrats to replace John Lewis on the ballot. So join them on social media and help press for actual democracy rather than behind closed doors work. So big shout out to Georgia for basically keeping that alive when so many just want that to pass by. All right, turning this over to comms.
Yes. Okay. So we've got a newsletter coming up, and we've got copywriters and copy editors at content creation team to polish the newsletter, but we don't have really investigative journalists going into the working group. So we're looking at getting like kind of press releases from your working groups. Let us know what you have going on, and then we can, you know, sort of make that shine in our newsletter form. So you can send your materials over to comms. Just drop a link in our channel to tell us what you have to share with the states. That's where the newsletter goes. It's a message from national org to the states. Volunteers, if you'd like to be involved in making content that we share on social media, we use canva.com, no graphic design skill required. So that's something we'd love to have you on board to do. And we are also seeking for volunteers, digital ambassadors, digital canvassers. So in both cases, it's a much more detailed role to describe in a channel post or a meeting. But basically, if you're someone who hangs out on any social media platform, like to spend a lot of time there and make connections there, like maybe 3 hours a week that you spend on a digital platform, then you would make a great digital canvasser or ambassador. And over a long-term project, we're going to be putting together some press sheet. And so in your regional chapters, start making contacts with your local press, writing letters to the editor, just reaching out to editors, reaching out to reporters. A lot of reporters right now are looking for people to reach out and tell them like what it's like experiencing the ups and downs with coronavirus. So find out ways that you can be in contact with your local press, because we're going to be building up from there how we can use press sources so that we have publicity for our actions, so that the mainstream media can be hearing what your chapters do. All right, check.
All right, diversity and inclusion.
Hey y'all, this is Kiara. I am actually calling in from Nashville this weekend. I just want to let everyone know that in our meeting this past week, we had an awesome presentation specifically on mental health illnesses that was reinforced by some critical data points. You can see the slides with the sources as well as the accompanying video that's currently hosted on YouTube. It's about a half an hour long. The whole reason for creating this was to complement the mental health initiative that we've been fleshing out, just so folks know that there really is a reason why. There's a pretty big few reasons why we have decided to turn our attention to this so heavily, including a general overview of various statistics and a deep dive into deinstitutionalization, mass incarceration, and other taboo aspects of mental health. And then we also provided a 3-tiered solution, which we suggested should be UBI in conjunction with improved access to mental health resources and prevention and public health awareness in general, as opposed to making it a personal issue. We are currently mapping organizations that are focused on mental health in lieu of forming some partnerships with them. So if you have any leads or know of any organizations of interest to you that may even have just the smallest thread in common with us as HFM, please either fill out that spreadsheet that's linked in this presentation here, or just message one of the members of the DIO working group about it, and we will put it in for you. And we are also looking to have folks come in and help us develop our HR materials. In the blueprint and overview that I linked for y'all, you can see what's already been fleshed out and what's sort of missing, as well as the overview of what the HR initiative should look like in terms of its structure. So that's it. Thank y'all very much.
All right, leading into the Blueprint Initiative, is there someone from Organization Management? All right, we will save that for another day, but yeah, check out all these great blueprints, so it makes it easier for folks to really know what's going on in the different national working groups. All right, and then Tech just wants to advertise to states that we have some services to offer you all. Some states have separate, for our national website, if your state is rebranded HF or HFM, and we want to directly link on our website out to you, and we're offering subdomained .hfmovement.org sites. So for example, ia.hfmovement.org is Iowa, and just this week, 4 more states requested that. So Tennessee, Utah, New York, and I'm forgetting one, New Hampshire. And so we're kind of growing our, we're growing our movement online. So it makes it easier for people to find us and work with people local to them. So we also have the MailerLite email newsletter software, and Tennessee is the first state that is importing their folks in there and sending their newsletters that way. So that's something we can offer you, the admin access in the national instance of MailerLite. And a super big shout out to Kim Devong and all the people who are working through our CRM selection process, which is going to be our national volunteer database as we build our movement this year, next year, 2022, 2024. But as the hashtag goes, 2024 is too late. We're operating in a super urgent time frame right now with the basic income march coming up and just all of this COVID economic lockup. But so Tech has some things if states want them. All right, and then we have Google Calendars that you can add as a layer onto your own personal calendars. That way you can keep in touch of all the kind of social hangs and working groups and phone banking shifts for our candidates, and find what's going on. And then that brings us to the end of the meeting. So any questions from folks? Or comments?
Hi, yeah, this is Rachel. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, good to be here. So I just wanted to comment and clarify on the situation here in Georgia. Thank you so much for the shout out during the regional organizing portion. So where we're at right now, as you heard, Congressman John Lewis passed away just over a week ago. On Monday, the Democratic Party, or I told you guys about that last weekend, that we were pushing for Barrington to be included in the short list because there were only going to be 5 candidates discussed at the meeting of the Democratic Party Executive Committee, right? Turns out we found out he likely came in 6th out of over 100. But there were certain people on there very staunchly advocating for him. But nevertheless, the Democratic Party voted to choose their own chairperson to be our nominee. Surprise, surprise. And it came out later. We have been in touch with a civil rights lawyer here in the area who says they were not actually legally required to do that within one day. They were only required to announce their intention to select a replacement. So we really believe that this is just another example of the party establishment, engaging in voter suppression and circumventing democracy. People are talking about the person who was chosen. She had this thing fixed for years. She's been lining up the people in the party to support her. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's too late to do something about it. The governor is legally required to announce a special election only to fill the vacancy in between now and January, because John Lewis, his term is currently ongoing. So our strategy right now, there are two goals. There's one, which is to push for this special election to happen and keep putting pressure and more pressure and more pressure on Georgia Democrats to say, you shouldn't have done this, and we want the person who was chosen to step down, and whoever wins the special election, we want that well, legally we'll probably have to have a second special election in January, but if somebody else wins the special election, that will be tremendous evidence that they did not choose the person that the people wanted. Of course, we on the ground here have endorsed Barrington. He's a pro-UBI candidate. He has a lot of support in the Yang Gang. You may have seen his interview back a few months ago with Paget. He's also been on Mindful Skeptics a while back, and just recently on Friday. If you want to see more from him, he just did another interview with Boyce on Mindful Skeptics. It was over 2 hours long. They got into everything. We're asking for your support mainly on social media with the hashtag election, not selection. We did a press conference on Friday, and we're hoping to do a protest sometime this week. We're just trying not to overlap with the funeral of John Lewis and the festivities surrounding that. So it might be as late as Thursday or after Thursday, but it's going to take a sustained effort over the rest of the year to continue putting pressure on them and not letting them sweep this under the rug. And don't let them silence us by saying we're playing into the hands of the Republicans. This has nothing to do with the Republicans. This is the people who vote in the Democratic Party in this district, which it's basically a guaranteed Democratic district, wanted a chance to choose their own representative. And at the same time, so that's one goal, is pressuring for the special election, pressuring for democracy. The second goal is, if you so choose, look into Barrington and support Barrington's campaign for the special election. I think he's definitely humanity first values, but go ahead and check him out or reach out to him. He'll talk back to you. So that's all. Thank you guys so much for all your support.
All right, so we've been sharing the Twitter for Georgia. They're HF_Georgia. Then their hashtag is the election, not selection, and Barrington Martin is votethedream.com. So check them out and support their efforts to pressure the party to actually allow the people to be part of this choice. All right, anyone else? All right, we'll just convert this into a hang. We want to thank everyone who joined us on the YouTube live stream. We really appreciate you checking this out, and we just strongly encourage everyone to come back out and reconnect with the people that you worked with through Yang 2020. If you're new to the Humanity For, Humanity First movement, welcome. We are, as Kiara said, actively looking to partner with other organizations to make our politicians responsive to us and the needs that the people have right now. So come on in, join the conversation, and let's take advantage of the pressure that this upcoming election is putting on all of these politicians to actually listen to people and do what they want them to do. So thank you everyone for joining us on a Sunday evening, and I'm gonna stop the recording and we'll just move into a hang.
Thanks, Catherine. You're awesome.
All right, that was good, and probably one of the few times that we've done